Do you know how to recognize command of evidence questions when you see them on the new SHSAT ELA reading exam? And very importantly, do you know the keys to answering those questions correctly? Let's jump into that today in the current lesson. So let's take an example of a few different passages where we run into this particular question prompt. We call it command of evidence. It basically asks a question and all the answer choices are in quotes, as we can see, and there's always a paragraph, almost always a paragraph or line reference following each and every answer choice. That's a good tip-off to recognize you're looking at a command of evidence question. The key for each of these questions is to figure out exactly what the condition is. You must understand the question conditions very carefully to be able to identify the only answer among the answer options that will actually answer that question and meet that condition. That's the key. So let's look at this. 24. Which sentence from the passage best conveys the author's perspective regarding the impact of Ederle's accomplishments? Okay, so we want the author's perspective, that's one part of the condition, regarding the impact of Ederle's accomplishment. So I'm looking for an answer that shows her accomplishments did something to somebody else, that they affected or impacted the world or something somehow. So let's go ahead and look at those answer choices. E. Gertrude Ederle's triumphant swim across the English Channel was a testimony to her determination, innovative spirit, and passion for swimming. That says nothing about her impact on other people and the world around us. So not really the answer to this question. F. For hours, Ederle swam, dodging debris with an amused smile. Okay, that's the author's perspective on her feelings at the time, but not the impact of her accomplishment. So again, F is not answering the question. G. Yet Ederle felt indescribably happy as she churned through the sea. Again, that's the author's perspective of her feelings. It is not saying anything about the impact of her accomplishment. H. Ederle had swum into history. There it is. H is the correct answer. It's the only answer choice that provides an impact of Ederle's accomplishment. The impact on the world is she had swum into history. Let's look at another example. 12. Which sentence best supports the idea that Bannister needed an alternative to logical planning in order to accomplish his goal? Okay, so this really depends on what is logical planning, and he needs an alternative. So this passage was about Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile. And if we go back to look at his training and see what is logical planning, what does that mean? Essentially, Bannister attacked the elusive milestone with a positive attitude and logical planning. It tells us what logical planning is. He used intensive interval training to develop endurance and speed. For these workouts, he ran an interval of 10 consecutive laps. So it's telling us what his logical planning was. It was interval training. By early 1954, Bannister had succeeded in lowering his quarter-mile pace to 61 seconds, but he had to shave off at least one more second in order to reach his target. Frustrated by the plateau he had reached, Bannister took a break from training. So that would be an alternative, since his training, his interval training, is the logical planning he's pursuing. Taking a break would be an alternative. And he went mountain climbing for 3 days. Well, that would definitely not be part of his logical planning. The rest from running permitted his muscles to recuperate and left him feeling refreshed. When Bannister returned to the track, he completed 10 quarter-mile-long intervals at 59 seconds each. So he beat his goal. When? After he decided to take a rest and do something other than training. That would be his alternative to logical planning. And it worked. So let's see which answer choice matches that goal. Bannister's performance was a disappointment for him and his country. No, that says nothing about an alternative to his logical planning. F. The amateur athlete decided to use intensive interval training to develop endurance and speed. That is his logical planning. But the question asks, what's the alternative to logical planning that he felt he needed? So F is not the right answer. It doesn't meet the condition of the question. G. For these workouts, Bannister ran an interval of 10 seconds. Okay, this is more details about his interval training, so it's not meeting the condition of the question, providing an alternative that he needed. Frustrated by the plateau, he had reached, Bannister took a break from training and went mountain climbing for 3 days. This represents an alternative he felt he needed from his logical planning, which in fact, the text tells us, is basically his interval training program. H is the only answer choice that meets the conditions of the command of evidence question, an alternative to logical planning or his training program. Again, the key is to correctly identify the conditions of the question. Only one answer choice will meet those conditions. Now, notice all the answer choices on the new ELA reading are in quotes with line and paragraph references, almost entirely, but you should be aware of some alternative presentations like 13 in this example. Which evidence supports the accuracy of Marsh's theories about nature? Notice the answer choices are not in quotes. There is no line reference. Nonetheless, we would still categorize this as a command of evidence question, and only one answer will answer the conditions. To summarize, if you're answering command of evidence questions, after you've identified them, make sure you identify the key conditions of the question. There's only one answer choice that will match those exact conditions.